Welcome back to the Manage to Win podcast. I'm talking with Chris Jennings today, superstar sales guru and coach. He has written 2 books, Conversations Made Easy and The Client Retention Matrix. And he uses the same pro sports or sports metaphors that we use in Manage to Win, or very similar, and in our Hire the Best system. This is a very valuable conversation, whether you're driving sales or whether you're driving company culture, because what he teaches works not only in sales, but throughout your organization. So without further ado, let's jump in. You need to hear from Chris. Chris, welcome to the show. I am curious, you talk about authentic leadership, and authentic's a powerful word. So how would you describe that to our audience?
Thanks, David. Glad to be here. And I believe what I mean by that in terms of authentic leadership is really, and I've often said, one of the keys to being a great leader is being more concerned with the success of your team than you are with your own personal success. And I feel like great leaders are able to cross that divide and take on a desire for their team to be successful, even more so than their own personal success, which is not always an easy thing to do. And I was working with a client I've worked with in a number of different organizations, a guy named Jeff. And Jeff and I kicked off this 2-day gathering with the new company he was leading. And he told a story about a woman that worked for him that never saw herself being able to accomplish what she did. And she went from being a sort of a behind-the-scenes researcher to a client-facing individual that not only did she grow to that $2 or $3 million business level, which was kind of their baseline, but she grew it to a $10 million plus business unit, so 3-4x what she could do. And he told that story because he wanted the people in the audience to know, this is possible for you too. This is why we're here. And that to me is authentic leadership. Is really,
I think that's great, but let's peel back the onion for us a bit, because I often say when I'm talking with salespeople is, you can be an introvert. By the way, I'm a massive introvert, or you can be an extrovert. Either one can work, but a lot of times the introverts don't figure it out. And I don't know whether that was her situation or something else, but what exactly did you work with her on, or did they work with her on through a series of steps to get her where I'm sure she didn't jump from 0 to 10 million overnight?
No, nobody goes from 0 to 10 million overnight, is in spite of some people's desire. And it takes, there's a lot of patience, and it's, hard work that you're doing day in, day out over a period of weeks, months, and years that eventually will get you to where you need to go. I think the key thing that we did and that we try to do with any organization that we work with is build a playbook that people can follow. So we go, hey, here's your pathway forward. And I usually try to simplify and go, let's find the top 5 activities that you need to engage in week in, week out, day in, day out, year in, year out. And if you can do these top 5 activities, whatever we decide they are, asking for referrals, running webinars, going to conferences, and if you can do with those with a regular cadence that we agree upon, you're probably going to get all the results that you want. And by engaging and committing to those top 5 activities, it's going to give you the opportunity to improve your abilities at performing those activities. So let's just say webinars, for example. Your first webinar is probably going to be terrible. Like your first podcast that you ran, you're like, that was okay, but I learned a lot, right? But by your 5th and your 100th and so on, you get better and better. But if you're not engaged regularly in those activities, you don't really have a chance to get your skill to improve, right? And so that's what we did, is we laid out a plan for them and showed them how to make those activities work more to their advantage than they would otherwise.
Let's stay here for a little bit. So you had this woman and she had a certain skill set. How did you assess her strengths and then connect those strengths to the activities that were mutually agreed upon to be most important?
Yeah. So I know her, and actually about she referred us to somebody the other day who is looking for help. So part of it is matching it to the person. And one of the things that we do to assess strengths is we do have assessments, tools that we use. We look at 4 sciences. We rely on DISC, motivational profile, a skill assessment, and an EQ, emotional intelligence assessment.
Okay.
So we take all 4 of those profiles to give that person some feedback on things they could do and sort of prioritize, because, you can't boil the ocean. So, but to like take it down to something smaller and more concise that she could work on. So that was number one. And then the second aspect there is usually we'll create a menu of, let's say, 10 or 12 different activities that you could engage in to grow your business. And then we'll work collaboratively with that individual performer to pick out the top 5 that resonate with them, that they can get behind. So if posting on LinkedIn every day is something they feel like they could never do in a million years, like my godson is a water polo player, and he plays on the men's national team. He was in the Olympics.
All right.
Yeah. And his name's Adrian Weinberg. He's a rock star if you want to follow him. And I suggested, like, if you want to build your Instagram following, you just need to post more. He goes, Chris, that's not me. I'm not going to do that. He does get interviewed on podcasts and things, but it's just not him. And I said, I totally relate to that. So let's figure out what are the 5 things that you can do, right, to build your brand and kind of build your career where you're going. And same thing for this individual that I'm talking about. We picked out those top 5 things that worked for her. And in her case, it was more around referrals. I think referrals, lunch and learns, calls with existing clients, conferences, and then I forget the 5th one exactly, but those are the kinds of things that we worked on.
Okay. And so you've got this person who's moved into this new role, or, maybe it's similar to a prior role, but new role. And she's like, okay, we're agreed on the 5. So talk to me a little bit about how the training process and mentoring process worked. So you just don't have nodding head syndrome of, oh yeah, I got it. And then nothing happens.
Yeah. Great question. So generally speaking, what happens, and we got all kinds of different arrangements, but generally speaking, what happens is we perform a sales audit on the company that we're working with. And we come in and just look at, hey, what's the good, bad, and the ugly, and make recommendations about where could you improve? What's the low hanging fruit? What's the long-term things to shoot for? Typically, after we've performed a sales audit, we usually build the framework of that playbook and initially launch that in a 1, 2, or 3 day event with a client. And so we're laying out some initial tools, like giving people new tools, new things to say, new things to do, so they feel like I can do that. And then there's ongoing coaching, weekly, monthly, bi-weekly, whatever it is, where we're reinforcing those new skills. Because look, nobody's changing overnight. And if you've never asked for a referral in your life, and you hear the idea of asking for referrals and you think it's a good idea, and you get in front of a client and you're about to ask, and then you get shy and stage fright because the meeting's gone well and you don't want to mess it up because you're afraid if you ask them for a referral, they're never going to want to talk to you again, which is nonsense, but that's what your head tells you, and you don't ask. So you got to come back next week or next month, and we'll give you a better way to ask that fits you in that situation. And that's exactly what we do.
Now, in this 2 to 3 day kickoff, you got a lot of time there. Mm-hmm. So how much of that time, if any, is spent actually having the people do role playing, situational type stuff, where you can get a baseline of where they are at the meeting and move forward from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So usually, let's just pretend it's a 2 day kickoff, the morning is delivering information that is encouraging to the audience, where we're going to get somewhere good, right? Like, oh, hey, this actually is helpful. Because a lot of times people come to a program like that, like, oh, what is this? Why do I have to do this? Et cetera, et cetera. But by the end of the morning, they're like, this is actually great. I love what I'm hearing so far. And then the rest of the time, we'll give you a little information. Now you go practice it. right? And so there's probably 2 practice sessions per, one practice session every 90 minutes to 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
If you kind of use that as a rule of thumb. And every time we're delivering a program, there is a little bit of dialogue, information delivered, then a practice session or exercise or something like that. And one thing we're trying to, like, I say this a lot, and if anybody reads any of the books that we have out, it's in there all over the place. I talk about being a student of the game, right? And now for your listeners, I know they're a student of the game of business because they're listening to your podcast. So you, whoever you are, listener, you are a student of the game. Like, you're reflecting on how this relates to your day-to-day. The question really is are all the people in your organization, are they students of the game, or are they going through the motions? Right? Because none of us are finished products. None of us are as good as we could be. David, you and I still have room to grow, guaranteed, right?
Oh, yeah.
Listeners, everybody on this who's listening to this program has room to grow. Every one of the people who reports to you or works alongside of you has room to grow. The question is, are they going to participate? Are they encouraged to do that? Are there options for them to grow? How do you do that? Like, and make it easier for people to grow. I mean, I'm an information junkie, so I was on my treadmill earlier with my YouTube playing. I had my YouTube going on AI sales tools, and then I interrupted it with listening to recorded calls from one of my clients. So, but I'm like, I just, I love to be a student of the game. And I think that's part of what keeps us going too.
Yeah. So have you done the 2-day sales kickoff and the team's engaged and they've learned some things and you're ready to go and you start coaching? But have you ever run into a situation where then a team member is held back because their boss really doesn't understand the approach that you're teaching or hasn't developed those skills or habits? And so they're either giving counter advice or they're not reinforcing well enough to help this person grow as quickly and as capably as they should.
Oh, 100% of the time, this is like always a concern. We try to get out ahead of it because whether it's the owner, CEO, or it is frontline managers, sales managers, etc., if we don't have buy-in from the management team that we all need to be students of the game, we all need to learn and grow. Like Jeff's company, for example, the one that this individual worked with in the opening story, I met them at 60 million. Within 5 years, they are probably around 250 to 300 million. And they did a really nice private equity deal. Then they kept growing and did another private equity deal. But they were committed, Jeff and Dave were really committed to the team growing. And everybody, like, that was the atmosphere, that was the culture, is that we're all like, it's important to take time out for us to grow. It's important for us to invest time in practicing what we do each day and how we talk to clients. And that is highly valued, and scrimmaging before we go on a sales call, on listening to a recorded call, on, developing an actual playbook that we're going to all try to adhere to the best of our ability. Like, that's a cultural requirement. And if we're on an assignment with a client and we have a problem individual, like, we're going to confront it. I have a call later today about somebody that might be leaving this organization. It's a frontline manager because they're the problem, right? They're not wanting to change. They're not wanting the team to grow. And I get it. Change is hard for a lot of people, myself included from time to time. Like, I have a dinosaur tail every now and then that knocks things over. So,
yeah. So when you're working with these managers, I mean, I love the fact that I don't know how often you do it, but you're listening to a recorded sales call, so you can give feedback. You don't have to schedule where you can be there all the time. So they're recording and you listen. But how often do you have your coach or their manager either sit in or listen to what they're doing so they can give some feedback?
Yeah. So I have a formula in Conversations Made Easy and our 10 systems to build a championship team. We have a formula around field rides, recorded calls. I've kind of a systems around all this, right? So our prescribed best practice for field rides is 2 per month per direct report, right? Twice a month per direct report. You should probably be out with your people. And there's 2 kinds of field rides I like people to go on. Number one, I call it a power ride. The power ride, you're involved, you're demonstrating what should be happening on the average world-class sales call. The other kind of ride is pure observation. You're just there to take notes, watch what's happening, and then give feedback at the end. And in terms of giving feedback, we have a formula on feedback. I always like to find 3 positive things and no more than 2 things to work on, which if we have time, I'm happy to go into some ideas on how to do field rides. But
yeah, I mean, why don't we stay there? Because I love what you're saying. Many years ago, as my audience may recall, there was a guy I highly respected, and he was asked to be the chairman of the board of a nonprofit. And long story short was that he accepted, and it was a mess when he joined. And the meetings were going to 1 or 2 a.m., blah, blah, blah. And he sat down, he said, "Thanks a lot for making me chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to serve." He said, "Number one, the meetings are over at 10 p.m. So if you're mid-sentence, I'm sorry, we're done. And number 2, you have to say 3 things positive before you say anything negative." So I love your 3 encouragements with 2 feedback. The formula just fits.
Yeah.
And that was probably, I learned that 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Something like that. Something like
those things
30.
stick with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important. Look, I get it. Life is so busy, and I get if a sales manager or a VP sales finally gets out with somebody and they're about to get on a plane, they want to tell them all the things that they saw on the call that were wrong or that they could improve on. And they're not going to be able to take it all in. You're going to lose them. I had a guy I went on a field ride with. I met this guy named Nick in a sales call in El Cajon, California, and I meet him in the parking lot. Nick's a great young sales guy at the time and still with the company today. Super personable person. And Nick looks at me and he says, "Chris, are you going to run the call today?" And I said, "Definitely not. This is all you." I said, "Chris Jennings, new with the company." When I got in, introduced myself to the customer, and that was about all I said until I said, "Hey, thanks for having us." And we walked out to the parking lot after about an hour. Nick looks at me and he says, "How did I do?" Right? And so here's what I told Nick that day. I said, "Nick, first of all, you got a really good way with people. Number 2, clearly you know this industry inside and out. And number 3, I think you found some pretty good issues to work on to help that customer." Right? And then the areas I gave him to work on, like I said, limited to 2. I said, that intake form that you have to like quote the job accurately? Well, you had it lying on the customer's desk the whole time. It's kind of distracting. The customer is glancing at it, wondering what it was. And then when it came time to fill it out, it got super clunky in there. Nick looks at me and he goes, "I've always struggled with how to get the information that I need to quote the job accurately without feeling like I'm completely annoying the customer getting all this detailed information." So what do? We came back to the weekly sales practice, which is part of our formula, and we ran drills on how to weave in the important information to get an accurate quote seamlessly into the course of the conversation, right? Because if Nick has that issue, everybody has that issue. So part of our process is to, on those field rides, identify the common themes that your employees or your team members are running into, and then build drills and skill practices around them, get video content of how to do that correctly, and build that video content into your playbook so you give your team members examples of how to do that correctly. I was talking to a great young sales leader, Michael, the other day, and they've followed this formula to a T, and he said, "Hey, we're going to expand faster, right? We got 12 salespeople right now. We're going to double the team because the last person we brought on was up and profitable inside of 30 days, which in and of itself is amazing because we have all this on video." And what we try to do is build a playbook, have video content to reference it, because that's how people want to learn, is they want to learn on video, right? And if you can give them those examples and then inspect what you think is happening by doing the field rides, you're going to be in good shape.
Yeah. And so common problem for a lot of leaders is they're great at pointing out what's wrong, but they struggle with those 3 areas of encouragement. So do you have a case where you had somebody who really struggled with that? I'm not saying the person was mean, maybe they were, but really struggled with it. And how did you get a breakthrough?
So I've got a couple that come to mind. One guy, his name is Chris, and Chris is he's smart, he's hardworking, he was very successful in his career. He's just a bit critical, right? And so to me, I feel like it's so important to have a formula that you stick to, right? So that if I ask a leader to go on a field ride, you're not allowed to, I just set a rule around it. You're not allowed to go on a field ride with your team unless you can find 3 good things that they did and no more than 2 things to work on. And you have to stick to that formula or you are not owning your part in the equation, right?
Yeah.
And now, this is the other thing, like it's really difficult sometimes for somebody's boss or leader to be their coach because it's difficult for the mentee to be completely transparent and honest. Like the guy whose calls I was listening to earlier today, I know he doesn't want to call his boss and tell him that I'm terrible at making cold calls. I know he doesn't want to tell him that because he gets paid a fairly, handsome base salary. But he'll tell me because he's hired me as his independent coach to work with him. So at least he's telling me the truth. I would say you got to have somebody you can tell the truth to. And so as a leader, if you're not encouraging your people to be 100% transparent and open with you, you're going to be dealing with half the equation. You're not getting the whole real story. And you want to really grow to be kind of that kind of person that people want to open themselves up and be humble enough to say, hey, this is an area I continue to run into that I could really use some help. And maybe you're the person to help them and maybe you're not because, we can't all be good at everything. I was talking about AI tools. I'm still learning. I have 2 guys on our team. 2 of our coaches are experts in using sales AI tools. I'm not an expert at sales AI tools. I mean, I'm learning, but so I defer that to them. So if you're not great at that, like have somebody else go on some field rides. Have your team members go on field rides with each other, right? And point stuff out, right? Because you never know who you're going to be learning from, right?
Yeah, it comes up all over. So I noticed that you had the books, Conversation Made Easy, and the Client Retention Matrix. It sounds like you've written some others. I wasn't aware of that.
Well, I have one in a big Microsoft Word document right now that'll come out and be my last book. I'm only going to write 3 books, David. I've really had a great time doing it, and I do it as part of my legacy to make sure that the information is there in writing and on Audible, so you can listen to my tonality. Like some of the stories I shared with you today, if they were helpful and you want to hear them again, or you want more detail, like they're there in the book. Whether you need help from our team or not to implement it doesn't matter to me. I just want that information to be there. And so the Conversations Made Easy is really about sales and sales leadership and acquiring new customers and helping your team members acquire customers and building a great team. The Client Retention Matrix is about doing more with the clients that you have. There's a whole section asking for referrals in there. So if you're looking for a really great referral reference, my last book is really about having success in your life. And I go into all areas of your life and one's life and try to help you get your top 5 activities dialed in, both personally as well as professionally. So, and I'll let you know when it comes out, but I'm working on it now. So,
okay. Well, I mean, it sounds like the 2 that you've got out right now, and which one of those documents more what you've talked about? Because like myself, particularly on our hiring system, we do the same thing. We kind of mimic pro sports. So you're the first guy I've talked to. Like instead of I talk that you can't hire somebody unless you do a scrimmage with them, which is you have them do real work with other people.
Yeah.
See how they work with other people, see how they do the work, see how quickly they learn, what they can apply, what they learn. And we use the term scrimmage, and you used it today. So I love all the sports metaphor.
Oh yeah. Good.
So that's all great. So which one of those books dives deeper into that, or they both cover it?
You'll see some of both, but really that Conversations Made Easy, the blue book, and it has all of the things that I talked about today in some detail, which one concept, and you'll appreciate this, that I think is unique to us. I haven't seen it, at least termed this way, is something we call special teams. And the special teams players are all of the non-sales, non-business development people that interact with your customers, your project management people, your technical support, your accounting folks, your installers. Like usually there's a whole host of individuals in your company that really are the heart and soul of most organizations. And most organizations have a lot more special teams players. I help companies identify, how do you engage the special teams group so that we are really approaching sales as a team sport, which I believe it is. And so we got a lot of tools in both books on how to engage the special teams group, because no individual salesperson's ever going to have the success in their career they could without the support of the special teams, of a great, well-coordinated special teams group around them. So.
Yeah, I like that. When you think of special teams, like in football, there's not a lot of them. But if you think of a business, there actually are a lot. And does that relate to when you teach about creating a client-centric culture?
Yeah, 100%, because the salesperson's role in the client success is in some ways only a small piece of the equation, depending on how the company is set up. The salesperson might be the one that introduces the client to somebody's company, but the client lives with the special teams group, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's the people they talk to every day. That's the people who are placing orders or facilitating a delivery or handling a credit and should be aware and capable enough of helping to expand and prolong the life of the customer. But unfortunately, that it's almost a lot of times it's sales versus ops, not sales and ops working together. And that's what we try. That's the whole theme of our special teams approach. And that's the theme of the client retention matrix, is how to really engage your special teams members to improve the performance of the sales team, because you have such a great special teams program.
Well, the other thing I'll bring up is the special teams actually prove the salesperson a truth teller or a liar.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, and the salesperson's going out there and basically saying, we can do this. And then if special teams isn't doing their job, because of the same reason salespeople fail.
Mm-hmm.
They're not getting the training. They're not getting the support. They're not getting, the field ride. So that's nothing. So I would assume you're recommending the company extends this same systematic approach.
Yeah.
Throughout.
Yeah. Eventually, we might start with the sales team, but eventually we want to be in front of all client-facing team members so that we can help it become a well-coordinated effort. The challenge, I would say, so for a lot of your listeners who are in that 100 employee or less category, everybody is doing double duty all the time, and those size companies don't take out nearly as much time for training and development as the Fortune 500 groups do. Large organizations know that by training and developing their people, they will get a huge return on investment. Small organizations hope to hire experienced individuals that don't need training and development. And I would say it's like, so I'm a Lakers fan, and the Lakers just traded for Luka Doncic, he's a great player, but if you don't get Luka Doncic to operate well within the system that the Lakers are executing, that JJ Redick is trying to install to get the whole team to play defense, to get the whole team to be looking, down the court, if you don't work that as a team, I don't care how good they are, you're going to waste your money and be disappointed. So my challenge to your listeners who are running organizations that feel like they don't have time for training and development is you're going to have to find a way to build that in, or it is going to cost you a lot of lost opportunities.
Well, and for most of them, it already has cost them years, if not decades.
Yeah.
And I go back to your authentic leadership comment. So this is where, and with AI, with outsourcing some stuff to other people on your team, contractors, even overseas, you got to find a way. And I think this is a whole new mindset. You've got to find a way where it's not about you and I have to do everything and I have to drive everything, but it's, hey, how do I get, so what was it? Was it Jack Welch? How much time did he spend with his people? Was it 50%? Something like that, or even higher, I think.
Yeah, I was just talking about Jack Welch the other day. So it's funny you bring him up. The investing time in any relationship that's important to you is always going to pay dividends. And I don't care if it's your spouse, your children, your team members, investing time in those people around you will always pay dividends. And doing it in a thoughtful way that engages your team members. Because the other thing I'll talk about in terms of retention, it is one of the employee retention strategies is to invest time in your people, because if your people are learning skills at your organization that they didn't bring with them, they naturally become more loyal. If they feel like all the skills that they have, they are brought to the table when they got there and they never got them from you, there's less loyalty. So as an employee retention strategy, investing time, money, and energy in your people is going to pay huge dividends for them to improve and grow. So there's all kinds of payoff. Like Jack Welch didn't do all that because he was a great human being necessarily. He knew there's a payoff in that. and that's why, all large corporations invest considerable sums of money in developing their team members because the payoff is there, right?
Yeah. And the other thing is, so when I had my epiphany about leadership after having a .com go .bomb, that I had founded, I realized I had leadership attributes but no skills. And my main failure was I was not systematic. And so I love your playbook approach. There's a playbook, everything you do as a system. There's numbers or metrics that you're going off of that makes it very simple. And so if people will, and the old Abraham Lincoln, sharpening the axe, what is it if I've got, and once again, I'm forgetting all the quotes, but
4 hours, if I have 4 hours, I'm going to spend 3 hours sharpening and 1 hour chopping.
Yeah, exactly. So if leaders can pause and you're like, oh, I don't have time. Well, what if you took an hour a day? What if you worked every Saturday for a quarter to put together the playbook, to put together the systems, the best practices? Some people call them standard operating procedures. Other people got other names. I like something more like best practices. Maybe. Do you have a term for that when it's a best way to go? Do you have a sports term that I'm missing?
So it's in the playbook, and then the ideal call, or we usually call it the ideal sales call. So for every aspect of your sales process, there is an outline of what the play should look like. And then there is a video recording of one of your team members carrying out the ideal execution of that play. So that's how we look at it as an ideal sales call.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I love but on the authentic leader, you talked about not about you, it's about them.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to stop whining that there's no time, which there isn't any time. I'm not saying you're lying, but you have to reframe your time and how you're managing your time, right?
100%. Yeah. You just have to prioritize people development. That has to matter. It has to mean something. And whether you do a half day once a quarter or an hour a week, like we're big fans of like a 1 hour, a minimum half hour up to an hour weekly skill practice. for any team. And then we run, that's what I was, right before I was on with you, I ran a 45-minute group coaching call where clients all dial in from across the country or wherever they're located. And we worked on some various skill sets. And so, but a combination of some sort of ongoing coaching, just like, if you want to get into better shape, you can't go to one shred class at your gym and hope to, look better at the beach come springtime. So, it's a daily, weekly routine. It's a regimen where you're working on becoming better. And personally, I've just found that to be terribly rewarding when I'm continuously learning new things and being challenged in a good way and mentored by other people. It's beyond just the professional success that we might experience. I find there to be a real personal payoff.
Yeah. So let me go back to this though. So let's think about the clients you've had. Think about a client you've had where they're just like, oh yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, but I just don't have that much time to put into my people, and separate the ones that just outsourced everything to your team. Did you have somebody who gave that pretty much, it seemed like a brick wall initially, no time, and you were able to do something that changed their mindset and they figured a way how to find the time, whether it was find the time to put together the initial playbook and best practices, because you really need that follow-up on those ideal plays and stuff, but then also to find the time regularly. So rather than 0 to 5% of their time being invested in their people, it got more up to 20% or more.
Yeah, I was thinking of an engineering company that we work with out of Connecticut, and he had seen me speak at some conference and took one of our ideas and brought it to the sales meeting, and the whole team, he loved the idea, and his whole team immediately pushed back and said, oh, this is terrible. We don't need to be micromanaged. And then he called me, he goes, I loved your talk. I loved your idea. But when I shared the idea with the team, they thought I was just micromanaging them. And I'm like, well, I'm not surprised. I said, let's talk about it. And then I met his VP of sales. And this person's VP of sales was probably a great salesperson, which a lot of VP sales are. And we use them to bring them in to help close a deal or work with a big opportunity, but he wasn't a great sales leader. And he wasn't a great developer of people. So we started carving out, so we build out an ideal week for both salespeople and all people, sales leaders, et cetera, all people. We create an ideal week. And in the ideal week, we have you document in your ideal week how much of your time is devoted to one-on-ones with team members, group, field rides, running drills, running scrimmages, etc. And we build all that into the ideal week, and then we hold you accountable for you executing on your ideal week, and then you hold your team accountable for executing on their ideal week to the best of your ability. And as I've always called it, an ideal week, because no week goes perfectly. We all have disruptions. We get sick for a while and we're off our game, or we were traveling incessantly or whatever it is. But I want you to come back to that, because I believe success happens in your ability to come back to the ideal week quicker than people who don't have an ideal week. Because you're going to get more time with your people. You're going to get more time with customers. And so those guys grew about 37% a year for about 3 or 4 years in a row until they couldn't resist the temptation of a really tasty offer that they got. And so, but and we continued to work with them for a period of time after they were acquired. But it really was a light game-changing experience for them to have that level of discipline. And usually, man, a lot of us, it's hard to change that much on your own without somebody talking to you about it and asking you about it and coming back to you. We all need accountability. We all need transparency with It's a number of people, and we all need to tell on ourselves.
But talking about this one individual, so a lot of times my experience is when you have an individual like that, they're better as a salesperson, professional, than they are in management. They can't transition. So what appealed to this person? What you talk about, you do, it sounds like you use similar assessments that we do. We use them from TTI. It sounds like you might be also.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do an excellent job.
Yeah.
And when you think of this person's driving forces or motivators, what was the tipping point that made him go, oh yeah, you're right? Because he must have been hard driving before and pretty much not changing.
Yeah. So we always try to get to everybody's why. We help people build goal boards and create sort of a future that they want. And so we'll always tie everything back to your personal why. I don't care if you're the owner of the company, the sales leader, an individual performer, a project manager. Everybody's got a reason why they go to work each day and do what they do. And so if you want to accomplish whatever the goal is, then we're going to tie back that action plan to the goal. And you are either committed to the goal or you're not, right? You're either attached to creating the future in your life that you would like to, or you're not. And you're willing to do the things that are required to get you there, or you're not. And, most people. So when I was talking about my third and last book, there's this, I don't know if you're familiar with the drama triangle.
Yeah, I am.
There's a victim and a villain and a hero or rescuer. Unfortunately, too many people in our society like to play the victim and blame either their company or the market or whatever for their lack of success. And the way out of being a victim is to become your own hero. The way you become your own hero is you own your part in your success, and you figure out what are your top 5 activities, and you execute on those to the best of your ability. You get involved in programs to learn how to execute on those in an improved way, and there's a way out. So, or you stay in victim mode.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting. My perspective on what I've learned with the drama triangle is that you actually, depending on how you define each one of them, you don't want to be any of them. So if you're the victim, you're looking for a villain to blame.
Yeah.
But you're also looking for a hero to take responsibility for what you're unwilling to do. Now, I like the way you describe the hero, that you described it as an authentic leader, to use your term.
Yeah.
Where the focus is on humility. And so what do I need to own? And then it focused on others, on how do I help others, but probably with an awareness that, well, this person's a victim. They need to learn how to take responsibility themselves.
Yeah.
Not rely on me to do everything. So interesting. So, okay. Well, is there anything else you want to close with here, Chris? I've really enjoyed this. It's been fabulous. Very inspiring.
Yeah. Thanks, David. I've enjoyed it as well. And I'll close with just encouraging your listeners to pursue whatever version of growth and development that they want to. So listening to your podcast is a great tool. Picking up either of our books on Amazon for them, could be a great thought piece. I would encourage them, and it doesn't have to be us, to find mentors that are going to challenge them to accomplish their goals and be comfortable and confident enough to hold them accountable to put it into action and not blame anybody else and just do what you can. Because it was the last thing I'll say is the coaching session I was on today was talking about the marketplace today, and the stock market's been in a lot of turmoil of late. And I had said, I was delivering a coaching session on Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. I was delivering a coaching session at Tuesday, 2009, when we were hitting the Great Recession. I was delivering a coaching session when COVID hit, and I'm delivering a coaching session today. So there's always, you can either live in the solution or you can live in the problem. So let's just try to live in the solution. And I'll encourage your listeners to live in the solution regardless of what's going on around them. And I hope we've been a small part of the solution for them and for you. And I'm really glad we had this chat today.
No, thank you very much. And just for those that are listening while they're driving or something like that, what's the best way to check out your stuff besides the books, Conversations Made Easy and the Client Retention Matrix on Amazon?
Yeah, if you go to chrisjenningsgroup.com, it's chrisjenningsgroup.com, you will find tons of resources. A lot of what we covered today, there's probably a downloadable document for you to reference as a thought piece or as a prompt to give you some more detail. So that's where I would start, and any other resources are all available there.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Chris. This has been wonderful.
Dave, it's been my pleasure. Thank you, my friend.